Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. We are live on the NFL trade deadline. We're now like an hour past the NFL trade deadline, and the Seahawks made a move, not the biggest move of the trade deadline. Also, by the way, and I had a great conversation with Bryce Coots yesterday. We kept the deadline talk until the end. It was I would say, a tongue-in-cheek allusion to some stuff that he told me off the air that the Seahawks had their irons in the fire on a lot of big moves, and including, by the way, moves that did not happen based on not just that the Seahawks didn't make, but that the league that did not occur in the league. So uh, a lot of big names didn't get moved. I think the biggest, or at least the most expected name that didn't get moved, was Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. I had my reservations about the Seahawks going and making a big move for an edge rusher. So I'm not completely surprised that the Seahawks didn't make a move for that player, that position. Also, I thought that the combined nature of Boye Mafe was potentially on his way out and an edge rusher was in didn't make a lot of sense to me for a team that was like stacking up bullets to be able to win some playoff games. Um, Typically, if you're trading a player that's a rental, like Mafe would have been, like Hendrickson would have been, like Rashid Shaheed is in Seattle, players that are in the final year of their contracts that you don't expect to re-sign, you typically don't trade them to a team that's selling. So to give Mafe up, you'd expect him to go to a team that was still trying to make the playoffs. It just made like the fit weird for me on Boye Mafe. So I'm not sad to see Boye Mafe stay. I'm happy to see Boye Mafe stay, frankly. And I'm glad that they didn't trade Mafe and then come up, swing and miss on a bigger name edge rusher. I would have liked to see Dexter Lawrence. I've been talking about Dexter Lawrence all year. I was surprised that no nose tackles, no true nose tackles, no mid 300 plus pound, 350-pound nose tackles were heavily linked to Seattle. Mazzie Smith ends up going to New York. New York had traded just fire sale. Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, somebody else, I believe. uh, Sauce Gardner for 2 first-round picks to Indianapolis. I mean, that's a team that's going for it for sure. I don't think I would want. I don't think I would have wanted the Seahawks to do that. But I will say, so the Seahawks trade for Rashid Shaheed, and he's been a guy with a ton of promise. Always interesting to see a guy. He's like a receiver by trade, but wears number 22. So you kind of expect him to get the ball in his hands, rushing the ball, and he's run the ball, 20 or so times in his career. And it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks use him in Seattle. This does feel like a trade where Clint Kubiak's pounding the table trying to get Shaheed here. And I think that makes you feel good about it. I do think that makes this slightly different than a normal deadline rental because Shaheed presumably has a lot of familiarity with the system and with the coordinator and might be able to step in and play effective downs as soon as possible next week on Sunday. So I think the trade, I'm happy with the trade overall. That, like, I'll spoil that part. I'm very happy with the trade. I think it's a perfect fit. I think Shaheed's a guy who's got this elite athletic ability that complements JSN pretty well. He's younger than Marquez Valdez-Scantling was. He brings something that, frankly, Cooper Kupp and Jake Bobo do not. And even something, like, from a strictly elite athleticism perspective, something that Torrey Horton does not. I think Torrey Horton's more of a complete receiver, and I think if you want to just take the top off of a defense, Shaheed's a better option. So exciting! Shaheed is actually who Bryce Coots suggested would make sense as receiver depth. By the way, I said Jalen Hyatt from the other New York team. The other New York team did not make any big deals, right? I will admit I haven't looked at anything in 30 minutes or so to see if anything snuck through at the end, but we always hear about that, by the way. We always hear about these trades that end up sticking through at the end or sneaking through. I'm trying to center my camera up. Um, and I've been following deadlines for years. I've rarely seen one. Hold on, folks. There we go. So Shaheed, though, the Seahawks give up a 4th and a 5th round pick in 2026. The equivalent value is about a 3rd round pick, is what I've grown to understand via Twitter. And a couple things about that, like I don't really love giving up 2 picks in the same draft. I don't really love giving up 2 picks for him. Happier with a 4th and a 5th and a 3rd, frankly. However, what I will say, and I said something about this to Bryce, and I stand by it, and I want, if you're listening to this now, remember this in April when every draft analyst is telling you how strong this draft is and how they used to be saying that it wasn't, but as they went through all the scouting process, it's actually strong for these various reasons. It's a weak draft. 2026 is a weak draft. It's I think 2024 is the last truly great draft. 25 was weak, and I think this one's not quite as this is my perception. It's hard to find anybody that's trying to record this, but I believe this draft is probably, of those 3, would be ranked second, but a distant second from 2024. So giving up picks in this draft, I think, is more forgivable on its own than giving up picks in the 2027 draft, where I think we would expect there's going to be a little bit more talent coming out. But to me, that is a steep price to pay for a guy who you're going to have for half a season. And it's possible that what New Orleans... So one thing that I said is I did not want the Seahawks in a position where they were bidding against themselves. Sorry, I did not say that about the Seahawks. I know this has been in my brain recently. I've said it about the Mariners and Josh Naylor, but I kind of mean it about the Seahawks and Rashid Shaheed also, which is I didn't hear a ton of rumors about Shaheed except for the Seahawks being interested in them. So to a degree, what the Seahawks might have been bidding against is the Saints' desire to keep and re-sign Shaheed. And maybe there was something there. And this is the Saints, giving up some leverage in that negotiation. Not having him on the roster means they at least can't talk to him for another several months. Maybe Seattle is interested in extending him, but to have a guy that's 6 weeks, who is half a season away from no longer being under contract, is for a 3rd round pick. You'd expect that guy to, I think, have had a more productive career than Shaheed has. Shaheed is on a cap friendly deal, so I don't think it's it's because I think you'll see stuff like a guy of equivalent talent gets traded and it's for, or like Logan Wilson, for example, not the same position, but a guy that was the top target for inside linebackers, I think, by a lot of people's estimation. He goes for a 7th round pick, but part of the reason is he's on the wrong side of the prime of his career and he's on a more expensive contract. Shaheed is on a cap friendly deal and he's in the prime of his career. Perfect complement to JSN, I think. A guy that will allow JSN to have more space to, if he doesn't draw double teams, which he probably won't draw double teams, he'll at least be able to punish teams for putting too much attention on JSN. We saw Torrey Horton do that this week. I guess there's other takeaways or implications people are drawing from the Seahawks inaction in certain spots, like Ernest Jones. They believe Ernest Jones must be fairly healthy or it's not a serious injury because Ernest Jones the Seahawks didn't go find his replacement. That's possible, that's true, but also they've drafted a bunch at that position. Tyrese Knight has played a lot of downs last year. I would suspect they were pretty comfortable bridging the gap of that injury with Knight going into that. I did see, by the way, Tavondre Sweat, who I would have liked to see the Seahawks take. He ended up going, I believe it was 2 years ago, and he went earlier than the Seahawks really had an opportunity to pick him. Not a first rounder, I don't think, but like a late or an early second rounder, and I think the Seahawks drafted later in the second round is my memory. No, I think they didn't have a pick in the second round. I think that second pick went to acquire Leonard Williams, and they drafted Christian Haynes in the third round. Anyways, there were rumors that the Titans were considering moving on from Sweat, and I would have been very. I didn't even consider that guy as a true option because I mean I think he's like a notch below, maybe multiple notches below Dexter Lawrence. I have an incredibly high opinion of Dexter Lawrence, but a guy who is that size with elite athletic ability for that size, I would have thought that would have been very interesting. Feel free to comment, by the way, if you disagree or who you would have liked the Seahawks to acquire. Dexter Lawrence was my top. I would have liked to see cornerback depth, but I don't know that anybody like. I wouldn't have wanted to see Sauce Gardner. I would have been worried about the Seahawks acquiring like a number one receiver or a receiver who is at the top of the hierarchy that would compete for targets or be frustrated with a lack of targets because JSN has become such a focal point of this offense, which is a real tightrope to walk, by the way, because when that guy's healthy, great. But when he's not, then you're like, well, fuck. There's nobody left on the offense. And then obviously, I think the number one thing that Seahawks fans wanted, and I could be wrong on this, but I think the number one thing they wanted was guard help. Somebody to take over for the struggles that Anthony Bradford is having. And I would have liked to see that too. I would have liked to see Carlos Ruiz. I would have liked to see Jackson Powers Johnson. I would have liked to see someone who was in a depth role. The dude the Chargers acquired, is it Donald Penn, the draft bust? Donald Penn? I would have liked to have seen somebody interesting, at least. Did he? I might be thinking of somebody else. Yeah, I think I must be thinking about somebody else. Something Penn, right? I didn't follow the deadline as closely as some others, as you could tell. All right, I'm gonna. Oh shit, we got some comments here. Hold on. My buddy Kyle Taylor says, "What's up, Casey? Did they end up trading Breece? I don't think so. I don't think that the Jets ended up trading Breece Hall, and he posted something that was like kind of offering condolences or his well wishes to his teammates in their new destinations. I think that Breece Hall is interesting because he's been a very productive running back, and I don't know that a team acquiring him is going to also want to pay for him. Mike Hansen, my buddy, says brilliant pickup about the Shaheed pickup. He says respecting the deep ball is opened up. Respecting the deep ball is open up. I think he says opening up the so-called struggling run game. It's not so-called struggling, by the way. Like by efficiency, it's the second worst in the league or something like that. That's not a good. It's a struggling run game. And then it says defenses will have to respect the deep ball on both sides, which will open up the so-called struggling run game. Okay, he clarified because he realized that he typed like his mom was freebasing Tylenol while she was pregnant with him. Is it a steep price to be a legit Super Bowl contender? This team, and then he says, now I sound like I've been chugging Tylenol. This team is a deep, talented team. Losing a couple picks is not that bad. Yeah, I don't know that I think Shaheed. I don't know that I think that the Seahawks were not a Super Bowl contender without Shaheed, and that they are with him. I don't know that he's the decisive factor for me, but I do agree having someone that can enhance your offense and enhance the strength of your offense. By the way, I do think that in sports we get obsessed with the idea of like filling holes, as opposed to making an elite thing even more elite. Frankly, the reality is the running game and the passing game, depending on how good you are at both of them, they're not worth equal things. You can cover up for a bad running game by having an even better passing game. And the Seahawks have done that this year. The Seahawks have one of the league's most potent offenses with a bad running game. That's the truth. It is a bad running game, and I don't think anyone really is that worried about it. Would I have I also don't think, by the way, that I said this to Bryce yesterday. I don't think that it's a running back personnel issue as much as it is an offensive line personnel issue. He disagreed and had a really good point. Go check that out if you have 58 minutes or whatever to listen to it. But yeah, I mean, an eventful trade deadline. The Seahawks make one of the league's bigger moves, but not the biggest move. And yeah, I mean, I think you got to be very excited about it. And I think, like, without sacrificing too much of the future. So I'm happy with it. Now what I'd like to talk about, we'll talk about two things and I guess we'll talk about one of them first, and then that's how it goes. I'm going to change the order that you were not aware of already. So the NBA is embroiled in this gambling scandal that I don't think we've it's really hit us in Seattle. I don't think that people are talking about it from a Seattle perspective. At least I haven't heard that. By the way, I have not. My life is in chaos. You actually heard, if you listened to the podcast yesterday, I got a call from my wife that my car had been hit and run, and I'm leaving for Louisville tomorrow. I'm going to open for my buddy Gabriel Rutledge tomorrow in Louisville. So, as always, my life is in some state of chaos. So the NBA has a serious gambling problem. I think that this has been minimized. I think it was minimized for several years as these NBA probes were doing independent investigations. And then suddenly the FBI becomes involved, and you can feel however you want about the FBI. But the FBI is now involved in these investigations, and we have players and coaches being arrested at their homes. Like, this is serious. And it's not there is an element of this from just like a game integrity perspective. There is absolutely a part of this that's just like hurts the integrity of basketball, no doubt. And I don't really believe there's a common like kind of meme response to this, which is these guys get arrested and then it's presented by DraftKings or whatever. And the reality is that so much of sports money now is coming from these gambling institutions. They're kind of inextricably linked to each other now. And that actually, there's this perception that means that the NBA should become less restrictive or should become less punitive when they find out players are betting. But it's actually the opposite. Because the moment the NBA and its players start to press on the lines, they start to press on prop bets, all integrity is gone. Now you're just betting on pro wrestling, essentially. Which is allowed, by the way. I do believe you can gamble on pro wrestling, but this is like, if that's occurring in high rates, we're talking about fraud. It's not just Pete Rose can't be in the Hall of Fame. This is fraud. And when Pete Rose gambled, it was significantly less accessible than it is now. Now it's on your phone. Now it's in several states. And one of the things that it's made me think of is, hold on a second. Hold on. We got to pause. My wife is calling. Hold on. Hold on, folks. So, this lady calls in the middle of the podcast every time. I do love her. Don't ever tell her I said anything mean about her. The first thing it made me think about is, how does it affect Seattle and how does it affect the Sonics? And does it affect Seattle and the Sonics? And I do think it does, because I think that the Sonics, The reason expansion is on the table is because the NBA has been very successful. The reason teams move is because the NBA is struggling in a place in some way or another. Struggling can be defined by a lot of things. In Seattle, it was not struggling with fan interest. It's a pretty common misconception. But in Seattle, it was struggling with civic willingness to build a stadium, right? Expansion is because the league is flourishing. Hold on, I gotta read. I'm gonna read my wife's text. Sorry, I'm burping into the mic, and it's fun. Is it fun to watch me text? Is that an enjoyable podcast experience? Let's see if we got any. Oh, this is my aunt. Good luck in Louisville. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna. You know what I'm not gonna do is say anything about how it's pronounced. I think there's a real crisis brewing in the NBA, and I think that it's possible that if this, depending on how bad this gets, the financial situation in the NBA is going to be a lot worse than it was a couple of years ago. And by the way, I do think that's also incentive for the NBA to, they cleared Terry Rozier for what he got arrested for by the FBI. The NBA cleared Terry Rozier. The NBA is not in a position to fight against Terry Rozier on this. They have a very obvious conflict of interest, which is if people don't believe that there's integrity in the NBA, if these gambling sponsors don't believe there's integrity in the NBA, they stop advertising. This is not like, it's not a small thing. And I'm just worried that I wish this could just get the goddamn team in-house and figure it out from there, please. Because it just feels like, to me, this is just going to have a little bit of a negative impact, delay the process or whatever. And I just am like, until they're here, it's not going to feel like they're coming back, obviously. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on that, by the way. I was thinking about it from like a game theory perspective, and it just was filling me with dread that as these players who are like upstanding guys, Chauncey Billups, upstanding guy, like a work hard, do the right thing kind of guy in his playing career. Coaches are going down for this stuff. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about, and I think it's like a little more like current and imminent, and also it's a little sexier. I think this is a little sexier. Is we finally are getting a trickle of these. So this is NBC Sports Major League free agent rankings 25-26 top 100 list. So we're not going to go through all these guys in depth. I think there's a couple people of interest that we could talk about. They also have contract predictions, which to me is the most important thing, because it's really easy to say. And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you're one of the people that's like, it's not my money, I don't care how much they spend, wrong podcast for you. I'm going to think about the money, because we know as Mariners fans, they're not opening up the checkbook. Okay. You would hope that with increased attendance and increased success and increased interest, that the Mariners would be more interested than they have been in past years to spend this offseason. You would hope that. But that's certainly no guarantee. Yeah, Mike Hansen, by the way, about the Seattle Sonics says, please get a team here before Kevin Calabro dies. Totally agree. I mean, that is like, I've long said that Seattle was blessed with two announcers, and one of them is in the Hall of Fame, and he was the second best of the two. Dave Niehaus was great. Kevin Calabro, in my opinion, was generational. Okay, let's go through these free agents. I think that, so we're going to see other predictions. I think Fangraphs will have predictions, and I think Major League Baseball Trade Rumors will have predictions. It's possible we'll end up going through all of them. For now, we're going to go through this one. I would say, based on everything else I've read about content, about market value and contract predictions. I think that this is the high end of what you should expect players to get. I think on almost every single one, I think they're like maximum of the expected range of contracts. I think that's true. We'll see what the other ones come out as, but I would bet money that the Major League Baseball trade rumors one comes out that's like a standard deviation below almost all these contracts, and I bet Fangraphs is somewhere, on either side of the Major League Baseball trade rumors one, but not as high as this NBC Sports one that was written by Matthew Pilot. I think that's Pilot. Okay. Number one on the list, Kyle Tucker, 29 years old, outfielder with the Cubs, 9 years, $360 million. We're going to start with just like, would I like this player on the Mariners? Yes. Would I want him for that money? No. If you could get Kyle Tucker on a 6-year contract at a $40 million price, I'd be a lot more interested in it. I don't think the Mariners are going to go out and spend $360 million over 9 years on a guy like Kyle Tucker, who's had some kind of ups and downs and who maybe is not a true outfielder anymore. Dylan Cease with the Padres, I just don't think the Mariners, I think they might be wrong that they have a historically great pitching staff, but I don't think they're going to try to add to it. I don't think that's where the resources are going to be allocated. Now, Bo Bichette, I did not expect to see a number on this list after skimming through it on Bo Bichette that I found intriguing. They have Bo Bichette, number 3, 8 years, $216 million. I have no idea if Bo Bichette would be interested or not interested in coming to Seattle. If you could get Bo Bichette, who is not a good defensive shortstop, but a guy who profiles to be able to move to third base. So in my opinion, if you're signing Bo Bichette, you're signing him as maybe shortstop for one season or maybe signing him as a third baseman. So put that in your mind. 28 years old, coming off of a very good season that had some injury stuff at the end. He ends up playing in the final series, but had some injury stuff at the end. Had some injury issues last year also, but before that was just a consistent like 120, 130 WRC plus shortstop, a 4-wing guy. If you could get Bo Bichette at 8 years, $216 million, which is listed here, I am in. Some caveats. I'm sure Bichette wants more than 8 years. I would not want to give him more than 8 years. I seriously doubt that the Mariners would want to give him more than 8 years. If Bo Bichette isn't getting 8 years, I would imagine he's going to want a bunch of opt-outs and stuff like that. And I'd give them to him, frankly, but depending on when they are. But I would say like nobody, as we've talked about every offseason it feels like since T-Mobile Park / Safeco Field opened, nobody's coming here. Nobody's coming to Seattle for a prove-it year to get another contract. You probably got to sign Bo Bichette through what he believes will be the end of his prime. So I would like that. 8 years, $216 million. If that's the real price that Bo Bichette gets and he had even a modicum of interest in coming to Seattle and they aren't offering him a deal, they fucked up, is what I'm saying. Alex Bregman, 32, third baseman, played for the Red Sox last year, had some injury issues, had some kind of ups and downs, opted out of a deal. Again, Bregman is a guy who the market was a little softer on last year, I think, than he expected. And at 5 years, $160 million for a 32-year-old on a team that's got this many young pieces coming up, I'm a little worried about that. I'd be like cautiously, like at 8 years, $216 for Bo Bichette, I'm fully in. If they sign him for that, A+ grade from me. If they sign Alex Bregman to 5 years, $160 million, B-, it's fine. I'd like shorter. I'd rather go, obviously I don't get any choice, but if it was 4 years, 120, I'm much more into 4 years, 120 than 5 years, 160. Framber Valdez, 31 years old, pitcher for the Astros. Interesting guy. 5 years, $150 million. I think we could move on from any starting pitcher on this list because I don't think the Mariners are going to spend a bunch of money on a starting pitcher. Pete Alonso, again, like Pete Alonso had a decent 2025, had the soft market. Is he going to go back to the Mets? There's a real dance going on there that's like kind of hard to understand. I'd be interested in him. I don't know why. I do know why, but I think that it's not that I don't know why I'm interested in him. For some reason, Pete Alonso at 31 feels older to me. Pete Alonso as a first baseman at 31 with his profile feels older to me in real years than Alex Bregman at 32. And I think the obvious reason is because first base is an easier position to play. Like, he's already all the way down the defensive spectrum. At least Bregman is still playing third base effectively and hitting well. Alonso is all the way down the first base, all the way down the defensive spectrum. He can go to DH. That's it. So I'm probably not into it, but I do think like this is a good starting point because we're at a first baseman who is 31 years old, who hits for power, who does the things that first basemen get paid to do. And I'm not saying that, we're going to talk about Josh Naylor in a little bit. I'm sure he should be pretty high on this list. I'm not saying the things Josh Naylor does aren't valuable. I'm saying the things he does don't get paid for when first basemen do them. Cody Bellinger, first baseman / outfielder, one of these weird guys that plays first base and has played center field significantly. Probably a corner outfielder at this point in his career. I believe signed a 1-year deal last year to play for the Yankees. They have him at 5 years, $145 million. And again, it's like, I can't place it for you why, but Cody Bellinger at 30 feels older to me than Alex Bregman at 32. And then I'm going to defy logic yet again. Kyle Schwarber, 33 DH for the Phillies. Can Kyle Schwarber play first base effectively? He's built a little bit like a guy that I've seen play first base in Seattle. I don't know if let's see if Kyle Schwarber's played much first base or any. Kyle Schwarber's like an all-world hitter. You worry about a guy with his profile and body type aging, and it's the same. I would be unfair if I brought it up for Josh Naylor and not for him. But I have more faith that in 3 years Kyle Schwarber will still be a very good hitter than I do that Josh Naylor will still be a very good hitter. Okay, we got any first base out of you there, Schwarby? Trying to get some. Come on. He has played 11 games at first base. I mean, I guess Philadelphia has Bryce Harper. He played 10 of those games in Boston in 2021. I completely missed the Kyle Schwarber Boston era. I suppose it's because it was like a grand total of not very many games, but yeah, I've completely missed the Boston era. I guess he played. How many games did he play in Boston? He had 168 plate appearances in Boston. Anyway, we'll go back to the list. Kyle Schwarber, 4 years, $128 million. Takes him to his, I think it would be his age 36 season. You're starting to get into the range of like, this is what they're suggesting Josh Naylor's going to get. And I would probably rather have Kyle Schwarber at that price than Josh Naylor, frankly. That's if you have a guy that's going to DH. I think if Schwarber could play first base, people would have been, like, if he played it well, people would be playing him there. But if it's just a DH, if it's just as a guy that's going to DH, I'd rather have Kyle Schwarber. Ranger Suarez, starting pitcher. We're going to move on from him. Josh Naylor, number 10. They have him here from the Guardians. Is that right? Are they predicting where they're going to sign? That's not what they're doing, are they? Am I crazy? Do they just have, maybe, is that what they're doing? Hold on, I gotta make sure. Yeah, it's the team that they came from. They have the Guardians here. This must just be a typo. So Josh Naylor, 28 years old. We know a lot about him. They say 5 years, $125 million. I said the max I would want the Mariners to spend on Josh Naylor is 3 years, $60 million. So for me, this is like a non-starter. I'm now to go back to Kyle Schwarber just a minute ago. I don't want him at that deal. But if I was going to spend $125 million on Josh Naylor or on Kyle Schwarber, I'm picking Kyle Schwarber every single time. So is this list, by the way. Shane Bieber, starting pitcher, move on. Munetaka Murakami, 5 years, $120 million. You know, you're always scared about spending money on these guys that came from Japan that have never played the majors. But they've tended to turn out pretty well in general. So I'm a little hesitant for the Mariners to acquire too many of these guys that are just like first base only. They have had and do continue to have too many of those guys. I don't know. I'd be interested. I don't know that you're getting a 26-year-old for $120 million if he's coming from the majors. So there's some high risk, potentially some high reward. I'd be interested, but I'd be apprehensive. Edwin Diaz at 32 years old. What did he opt out of his? He must have opted out of his $102 million contract. Oh yeah, they say he's going to opt out, and then they're expecting him to get 5 years, $110 million. I still contend that the Mariners won the just by getting rid of half of Robinson Cano's salary. Giving up Edwin Diaz in that deal was worth it. But Diaz has become so good that it's difficult. It's difficult to keep that assessment. I don't think there's any way the Mariners are going to spend $110 million on a relief pitcher, but just interesting to think back on. Michael King, starting pitcher, will move on from it. Gino Suarez, 34 years old, third baseman for the Mariners. Predicted contract, 3 years, $78 million. If that's what Gino Suarez is getting, fucking move on. Have fun. Enjoy your millions of dollars. Congratulations. You did it. I hope the Mariners aren't paying him that money. I like Gino. I like Gino just fine. I cannot imagine a deal where he ends up back in Seattle. Devin Williams, reliever for the Yankees. We can move on from him. I think at 4 years, $88 million. I don't think the Mariners are going to spend $20 million. They have Andres Munoz on one of the greatest contracts for a reliever in baseball. I don't think they're spending that much money on a guy who probably figures to be behind Munoz in the depth chart. Trevor Story, 33 years old, 3 years, $75 million. I think this is in the range of possibilities. I don't think I would want them to spend $75 million, but I do think Story at 33 years old, and especially if he's willing to move positions at some point in those years. Because the problem with signing a shortstop, of course, is that the Mariners have Colt Emerson coming up. So if Colt Emerson can play shortstop, you probably want him to play shortstop. So if you sign Trevor Story, you'd like him to be willing to move off of shortstop at some point. It's not ultimately his choice, but like for clubhouse harmony, I think you'd like to have that on the table. Would I rather have? What did I say for Gino? I think I said 2 years, $30 million for Gino, or maybe I think that was for Jorge Polanco. So Story is probably like, Polanco had a better season at the plate. I think that's probably my max on Story also. Again, I just want to tell you, these 3 years, $75 million, I don't think Trevor Story's getting that. And I'm willing to go back on these that I've been adamant about. I think Trevor Story's probably getting, I would bet, what did he opt out of? What was his $55 million owed over the next 2 seasons? That's what he opted out of? Oh, man. He might have a bad agent. If I was him, I think I'm still, I don't actually kind of don't think he's going to opt out of that if it's $55 million over the next 2 years. We'll check on the comments real quick, see how much everyone hates this. We're still on. We got nothing. Everyone hates this completely. They've tuned uh, Brandon Woodruff, starting pitcher, move on. Giolito, move on. JT Realmuto is interesting. Not that the Mariners would do anything to acquire him, but 3 years, $60 million for a 35-year-old catcher has to make you feel great about the Cal extension. Zach Gallen in the we're getting into like maybe a third tier of starting pitchers where I think it's possible the Mariners spend money. I'm not predicting that they would go after Zach Gallen, but if you can find one of these guys that's like if you can find a guy that's undervalued, like Gallen maybe is on this list, you start to consider, I think, the holistic value for the team. Kazuma Akamoto, same deal. It's just he's 3 years older than Murakami. It's just hard to project these guys. 3 years, $54 million. Yeah, sure. If that's what it takes, yeah, take that risk. Fine. That's not the worst. I mean, take it knowing that there's relatively high probability that it's going to fail and some probability that there's going to be a ton of surplus value. Chris Bassett, move on. Shota Imanaga, again, like starting pitcher. I'm going to move past these pitchers. Jack Flaherty's a guy that I would say keep your eye on. Their prediction is a 1 year, $24 million deal. Just if one of these guys sticks around till the end of free agency, just keep an eye on him because the Mariners could very well trade away Luis Castillo and go like, yeah, it's worth it. Throw him at the back of the rotation. If Jack Flaherty is your fourth or fifth starter, that's a great place to be as an organization. 1 year, $24 million, no, obviously you're not. I don't think the Mariners are going to pay him that. But if he a starting pitcher in Seattle may come to Seattle for a prove-it deal. Harrison Bader. I just I don't really think they need a mid-range outfielder, right? What are the Mariners? I think they're going to look for. I saw an article today that said that I didn't remember the source. That said they like Ben Williamson, which I think would mean that they like him more than I like him, because I don't know if I like Ben Williamson. I don't know if I like his prospects. I don't know him as a person, but I don't know if I like his prospects to be a productive big leaguer. So I would not mind the Mariners doing something at third base. I would love to see some shots taken on relievers. Maybe ones that you have some conviction on and aren't going to move on from, like Drew Pomeranz, who ends up going to Chicago and having a great season. And by the way, like nobody could have predicted that he would have done that in, the off season. But to watch him pitch for a couple months, you'd have thought that the Mariners could have figured out either you would have hoped the Mariners would have figured out whatever the Cubs figured out, or that they would have seen whatever the Cubs saw. I'm probably out on Bader. Gleyber Torres, don't want Gleyber Torres, don't even care the price really. Just a bad profile fit in Seattle. He was a guy that got predicted here by a lot of people last year, and I was out on it. Robert Suarez, are we on our second? Is that our second Robert Suarez? Ranger Suarez. That's like what the. So Trent Grisham's a guy. So you get all the way down to 33 before you get to Jorge Polanco, and they have Polanco at 2 years, $34 million. And I just I know people don't want Polanco to play first base, and I don't want that either. I do think that if Polanco is your opening day first baseman, and there's not some freak injury in spring training to blame for it, if that was the plan, I do think that's another offseason failure. But is Polanco at first base? Here's the question I think you got to ask yourself. Is Polanco at first base in 2026 worse than Josh Naylor at first base in 2026? All in. With the understanding he's not played a lot there defensively, or maybe at all. So he's a guy learning a new position. But a guy who's played in the infield. It's not. I feel better about the idea of moving someone like him there than Luke Raley, who was an outfielder that's just big and tall and long. My suspicion is that offensively, those guys are very similar, Polanco and Naylor, and I bet the defense isn't that far apart. So would I rather have Josh Naylor at 5'1", or Jorge Polanco at 234, 2 years, $34 million? I think it's so easy for me that it's Polanco. Um, Now if it's 360 or 234, I'm probably taking Naylor because he's younger, he's been healthier, but he hasn't been completely healthy. By the way, he's been healthier in the last couple of years, but he hasn't been completely healthy. He's missed a fair amount of games. Um, Ha-Seong Kim, interesting. I don't have like strong opinions. Uh, I don't know, injuries and lack of production as a result of those injuries. Um, they just give me some pause. Rysel Iglesias. Here is a guy who I think is interesting. Who's been a little bit of like a sabermetric starling over the course of some years. Is he going to get 2 years, $28 million? My suspicion. And we can go back and look at what these guys get. I don't think he's getting 2 years, $28 million. What I think is happening with this list, I want you to know, is I used to do a fantasy football prediction article for this now defunct website called Fantasy Football Jungle, and I would start out by doing rankings, and then you'd be like going through the rankings, and you're like, well, this person has to be like a little bit less than this person, has to be a little bit less than this person, and I think they're just easing us down. I think that the drop in average salary and in total contract is more precipitous than this list is indicating. There's a lot of or very few people are going to get most of this money. I would be shocked if Iglesias got 2 years at 36 years old and with the struggles he's had. Um, but I'm also like, I also don't think he's going to get $14 million a year. I'd be interested if you're talking like January, February signing, and not at this not at this price. Ryan O'Hearn, I was interested in at the deadline. 2 years, $28 million. Not doing that, but I'd do a 1 year deal. Again, first baseman. He's at the bottom of the defensive spectrum. Struggled after leaving Baltimore. Yeah, but I'd be interested. Taylor Rogers, not even really worth talking about in my opinion. Max Muncy is he has an option, club option. I think he's gonna obviously they're gonna pick up the club option. Justin Verlander at 43 years old. His predicted contract is 1 year, $15 million. There's a really strong chance that Justin Verlander is not going. I mean, he's 43 years old. There's just not a lot of pitchers who are pitching great at 43 years old. What did he do in, what does this say? I'm trying to get my cursor to move. We're fighting a lot of problems here. Here we go. Okay, let's find what Verlander did. In his one season with the Giants, 152 innings, 3.85 ERA, 137 strikeouts, 52 walks. If Verlander's still interested in playing, I think there's a decent chance. So he's worth 1.2 wins above replacement, according to Baseball Reference. I kind of want to see what he is. I'm much more skeptical of their WAR formulation than of Fangraph's WAR formulation. Fangraph's WAR formulation is based on FIP, and I don't think that's true for Baseball Reference. So he was worth 2.2 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. So I think $15 million is like probably close to market value. I don't want to pull up the spot track numbers, but if there's ever been a player who was like valuable from an intangible perspective, a Mariners pitching staff that you want really badly to stay healthy, to learn to stay healthy, to do everything they can to stay healthy, to get a guy that's pitching into his early 40s in there to be an example of fitness and between start regimen. It's probably your guy. Mike Hansen says, I just woke up drooling on my desk. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave the filthy jokes I had about that, the just brilliant filthy jokes that I had about that. We'll leave them at bay. As you go down this list, I mean, it starts to become these kind of like 1-year deal guys. Nobody here is super interesting to me. We'll see if we hit. I'll be curious. I have not gone all the way through this list. Sir Anthony Dominguez, for him to be pitching the games he was pitching, and this far down on the list, I'm interested. High strikeout rate, I'm interested. I'm interested in him as a guy that if you could get him for 2 years, $16 million. I just don't think that the 53rd free agent contract, the 53rd largest free agent contract, I don't think any year is $8 million annual average value. I just don't think that's correct. I think the list is wrong. Cedric Mullins was a guy I liked at the deadline. I don't think his profile gets paid 1 year, $10 million. Again, Drew Pomeranz, I don't think is getting paid that amount. I mean, as you go down this list, I think the contracts are ridiculous. Danny Jansen is a guy who he's like a league average hitter, plays decent defense, really neutral platoon splits, which is interesting and also not necessarily beneficial because it doesn't give you an obvious time to DH Cal and bring Jansen in. But a guy who's hit for some power, the numbers they show here, he's like, league average power for all positions. So maybe a little higher than league average power, but with like some exit velocity numbers that I believe that are pretty good. I don't think Jansen's going to go start anywhere. If you could get him, they say 1 year, $8 million. It's just, there's just not, the 63rd guy is not still getting an $8 million a year annual average value contract. I just don't think that's. I don't want to validate that in real time and be wrong and look like a dumbass. So we'll protect my ego, but yeah, I just don't think that. We'll see if there's anyone. Paul Goldschmidt, I'm just like, it feels like it's the end for Paul Goldschmidt, frankly. Starling Marte, similarly, like I just don't know if there's anything there. I would be Josh Bell getting 1 year, $7 million would be interesting. I'd be not at $7 million, but I'd be interested in seeing what Josh Bell, if he could finally put it together for a season, maybe. Walker Buehler is interesting. Again, like a bottom end of the free agent market kind of guy, which is hard to even imagine considering how good he was several years ago. Yeah, I'd be interested. I feel like that Chef Reactions guy that's like just talk shit and then he's like, yeah, I need it. Of course I need it. Yeah. The Isaiah Kiner-Falefa guy played for the Jays, obviously. Kind of a base running blunder that ends up potentially costing them the series, not getting a big secondary lead, whatever. Interesting. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised to see how low these like recently former Jays are on this list. Yeah, I mean, you get down to here, we're talking about, like, these guys are going to be minor league invites. I don't think that Michael Lorenzen is getting $6 million guaranteed. This should have been a 50 list. A list of 50. What are we doing? Is there anyone interesting left on here? Miles Mikolas. The only reason I want Miles Mikolas in Seattle is because my friend Matt Mikolas, you may know him as Slickhawk, would be, I think, obligated legally to get a jersey. Yeah, Michael Conforto's got to be done. These guys are done. We're at the bottom of the list. This is a washed, as the kids say, group of guys. This did not need to be. This did not need to be 100. Chris Paddock is interesting. But like this is the worst version of him. Again, Tommy Canely is interesting, but you're talking about like the worst versions of these dudes. The end of the best of the million. This is a bad list. I'm gonna pull up. Let's see if we can get the MLB free agent tracker. Were there 100 guys? Let's see if we can move this to 2025. So when you get to, I'll share this with you here on Fangraphs. When you get to the 50th player, Harrison Bader, last year, he got a $10 million contract. $10 million total value of his contract, 1 year. These aren't predictions. Oh no, these are crowdsourced results. I'm sorry. Come on. Lost the cursor. It's moving too fast. What I really want to see is... So those are the actual crowd predictions. Actual contract. Here's what we want. So you get to the 50th guy, it's an $8.5 million annual average value. This is what I'm talking about. That list is just like, it is wrong. These guys are not getting that much money that far down the list. And you get to when you're at the 100th guy, it's $2.7 million. It's the list is wildly inflated. And I think I've demonstrated that, but like there's just not a lot of guys at the bottom of this list that I'm super excited about, and that I would, like Dylan Moore is not going to get $4 million next year. All right. So that's the, what a way to end the podcast. It's just me. I get to the end of this and I just absolutely shit on it. Please come see me do comedy. If you know anyone that lives in the Louisville area, please tell them. I'm going to try to be better in 2026 about posting my dates. I don't think I have any Northwest-based headlining stuff the rest of the year, but keep an eye out. Casey McLean Comedy on Instagram. Casey McLean Comedy on everything else except for Twitter, where I am the Casey McLean. Thank you for listening. Sorry, Mike Hansen, for making you fall asleep. Let's see if there's any no more last comments. Thank you for chatting, by the way. That really makes this a lot more fun. And I will talk to you later.